Far beyond the familiar borders of human space, on the edges of the unknown, the Kepler mining station stood as a lonely outpost, mining the precious minerals of a barren world. Commander Sarah Chen, a seasoned leader, and her diverse crew had long been accustomed to the quiet hum of routine work, until one fateful day, an unusual signal broke the silence. At first, it was just a whisper, barely detectable among the static, but the message it carried was clear. A desperate cry for help from a species long unknown to humanity. The signal, intercepted by the mining station's communications array, wasn't meant for human ears. It came from the peaceful, enigmatic, ethereal confederacy, a race of beings revered for their diplomacy and serenity. But this was no ordinary distress call. It was a plea from the Zephyrians, an endangered species caught in the deadly grip of the Shadow Maw raiders. With the laws of human space exploration forbidding unauthorized action, Commander Chen and her crew found themselves standing at a crossroads. The choice was simple yet daunting. Do they follow the regulations or defy them to rescue those in need? As the transmission echoed in their ears, the stakes grew higher, and the path to an uncertain destiny began to unfold. The intercepted call. The discovery. The Kepler mining station hung in the void like a mechanical spider, its 8 arms reaching out to harvest precious metals from the asteroid field that surrounded it. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck, watching the automated miners work their magic on a particularly large chunk of platinum-rich rock. The station had been her home for 3 years now, and she had grown to love the peaceful isolation of the outer rim. "Commander, you need to see this." Dr. Marcus Webb's voice crackled through the intercom, breaking her morning routine. Webb was the station's communications specialist, a man who could make sense of radio waves and quantum signatures that would confuse most people. Sarah made her way through the station's corridors, passing the sleeping quarters where the night shift was resting, and the mess hall where the day shift was grabbing breakfast. The Kepler station housed 43 souls, all of them handpicked for their skills and ability to work in the isolation of deep space. Webb was hunched over his console when she entered the communications bay, his fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed wave patterns and frequency analyses. His short brown hair was disheveled, suggesting he had been working on this problem for hours. "What have you got for me, Marcus?" Sarah asked, settling into the chair beside him. "Something that shouldn't exist," Webb replied, his voice tight with excitement and concern. "I picked up this signal about 4 hours ago. It's encrypted, but not with any human technology." Sarah leaned forward, studying the pattern on the screen. It looked like a series of musical notes, rising and falling in complex harmonies. "Can you decode it?" "Already did," Webb said, pulling up a translation matrix. "It took me 3 hours, but I managed to break through the encryption. Sarah, this is a distress call." He activated the playback, and suddenly the bridge filled with sounds unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. The voice was melodious, almost song-like, but there was an unmistakable note of terror in it. "This is Dr. Lyra Windwhisper of the Zephyrian research vessel Harmony's Dream. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Our shields are failing. We have sent this message to our allies in the Ethereal Confederacy, but they are too distant to reach us in time. Our research into peaceful applications of quantum harmonics must not fall into the wrong hands. If anyone receives this message, please." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the communications bay in silence. The decision. Sarah stared at the console, her mind racing. This was first contact with an alien species, something that had been dreamed about for centuries, but it was also a distress call, and every fiber of her being as a commander screamed at her to respond. "How far away are they?" she asked. Webb consulted his readings. "Based on the signal degradation and travel time, I'd estimate 6 hours at maximum burn." "What about the attackers they mentioned?" "Unknown, but the Zephyrians called them shadow ships in their transmission. That doesn't sound friendly." Sarah's second-in-command, Engineer Rosa Martinez, entered the communications bay. Rosa was a compact woman with grease-stained hands and an encyclopedic knowledge of every system on the station. She had been monitoring the conversation from the engineering deck. "Commander, If we're thinking about responding to this, we need to talk about capabilities, Rosa said. The Kepler station wasn't designed for combat. We've got mining lasers that could be weaponized, and our shields are strong enough to handle asteroid impacts. But against purpose-built warships? Sarah nodded. What about the Resilience? The Resilience was their supply ship, a tough little vessel designed for long-range missions. She's got better engines and some basic defensive systems, Rosa admitted. But she's still just a cargo hauler. Navigator Jin Park joined them, drawn by the unusual activity. Jin was young, barely 25, but he had an intuitive understanding of three-dimensional space that made him invaluable for navigating the asteroid field. I couldn't help but overhear, Jin said. If we're going to rescue someone, we need to move fast. A distress call that old. They might not have much time left. Sarah looked around at her crew. These people had signed up for mining duty, not a rescue mission into unknown space, but she also knew them well enough to see the determination in their eyes. According to regulations, we should report this to Earth Command and wait for instructions, Sarah said slowly. That would take 48 hours minimum. These Zephyrians don't have 48 hours, Webb pointed out. Sarah made her decision. Rosa, prep the Resilience for immediate departure. Jin, plot a course to the source of that signal. Webb, try to raise the Zephyrian ship and let them know help is coming. What about the mining operation? Rosa asked. The asteroids will still be here when we get back, Sarah replied. But those people might not be. The journey. 2 hours later, the Resilience separated from the Kepler station and accelerated toward the coordinates Webb had calculated. The ship was cramped with 20 volunteers from the station crew, all of them determined to help despite the risks. Sarah sat in the captain's chair, watching the stars stream past as they traveled at maximum velocity. The Resilience groaned under the stress of the high-speed journey, but Rosa's engineering expertise kept all systems running smoothly. Commander, Webb called from his station. I'm receiving more transmissions from the Zephyrian ship. They're still alive, but barely. Their shields are down to 12%. Any word from these shadow ships? Sarah asked. Negative, but I'm detecting energy signatures consistent with weapons fire. The battle is still ongoing. Jin looked up from his navigation console. We'll be there in 3 hours. But Commander, I'm also detecting something else. There are more ships converging on that location. Big ones. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. How many? At least 8, maybe more. They're coming from different directions, but they'll all arrive around the same time we do. The crew exchanged worried glances. They had volunteered for a rescue mission, but it was starting to look like they were flying into a major battle. Options? Sarah asked. Rosa spoke up from the engineering station. We could modify the mining lasers for combat use. They're not military-grade weapons, but they might be enough to tip the balance in a fight. Do it, Sarah ordered. Webb, keep monitoring those transmissions. I want to know everything about the situation before we arrive. For the next 3 hours, the crew of the Resilience worked frantically to prepare for combat. The mining lasers were recalibrated and focused, emergency medical supplies were prepared, and every system was pushed to maximum efficiency. Webb continued to monitor the alien transmissions, providing updates on the battle. The Zephyrian ship was still alive, but their situation was growing desperate. The shadow ships were methodically wearing down their defenses, apparently in no hurry to finish the fight. Commander, Jin called out. We're approaching the battle zone. I can see ships on visual. Sarah moved to the forward viewport and gasped at what she saw. The Zephyrian ship was a thing of beauty, all flowing curves and organic shapes that seemed to shimmer with internal light. But it was surrounded by dark, angular vessels that looked like they had been designed by someone's nightmare. Those must be the shadow ships, Webb said, joining her at the viewport. They're not like anything in our databases. How many Zephyrians are on that ship? Sarah asked. According to their transmissions, about 30 researchers and scientists, no military personnel. Sarah felt her jaw tighten. 30 unarmed researchers being hunted by professional killers. The decision was easy. Jin, take us in fast and hard. Rosa, charge the lasers. Webb, broadcast on all frequencies. Tell those shadow ships that they're attacking under the protection of the Terran Mining Consortium. Commander, Rosa said carefully, we're not actually part of any military organization. Sarah smiled grimly. They don't know that. Sometimes the best weapon is the one your enemy thinks you have. As they approached the battle zone, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to step into something much larger than a simple rescue mission. The universe was about to learn what humans were capable of when they decided to help someone in need. The Deathworld Intervention First Contact. The Resilience burst into the battle zone like a meteor, its engines blazing as it closed the distance to the beleaguered Zephyrian vessel. The shadow ships immediately turned their attention to the newcomer, their dark hulls bristling with weapons that glowed with malevolent energy. Unknown vessel, you are interfering with a legitimate salvage operation, came a harsh voice over the communications channel. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences. Sarah keyed the response channel, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran vessel Resilience. You are attacking a ship that sent a distress call. Cease your attack immediately. Harsh laughter echoed through the communication system. Terran, I am Captain Kess Voidclaw of the Shadowmaw Raiders. Your species is unknown to us, and your single ship is no match for our fleet. This is your final warning. Sarah looked at her crew, seeing the determination in their faces. These were miners and engineers, not soldiers, but they had the same stubborn refusal to back down that had driven humanity to the stars. Jin, evasive maneuvers. Rosa, fire when ready. The Resilience dove toward the nearest shadow ship, its modified mining lasers burning through the void. The beams struck the enemy vessel's shields, causing them to flare and buckle. The shadow ship returned fire, but Jin's piloting skills kept them ahead of the incoming energy bolts. Their shields are stronger than our lasers, Rosa reported, sweat beading on her forehead as she worked the weapons controls. But I think I can overload them if we concentrate our fire. Do it, Sarah ordered, then opened a channel to the Zephyrian ship. Harmony's Dream, this is the Resilience. We're here to help. Can you move your ship to safety? The response came in that same musical language they had heard in the distress call, but this time Webb's translation program was ready. Resilience, this is Dr. Lyra Windwhisper. We are grateful for your assistance, but our engines are damaged. We cannot escape. Sarah cursed under her breath. A rescue mission had just become a holding action. Webb, can you coordinate with their ship? I want to know their status and capabilities. Already on it, Commander. They're sharing their technical specifications now. The data that came through made Sarah's heart sink. The Zephyrian ship was a research vessel built for studying quantum harmonics and peaceful exploration. It had no weapons, minimal shields, and a crew of scientists who had never seen combat. Commander, Jin called out. 3 more shadow ships are moving to flank us. They're trying to box us in. Sarah studied the tactical display, her mind racing through possibilities. The Shadowmaw Raiders had them outnumbered and outgunned, but they seemed to be taking their time, playing with their prey. Rosa, how much power do we have left? 60% and dropping. Those weapons modifications are drawing more power than I calculated. An idea began to form in Sarah's mind. It was risky, possibly suicidal, but it might work. Jin, can you thread us through the asteroid field on the edge of this system? Jin's eyes lit up with understanding. Those big ships won't be able to follow us through the tight spaces. But Commander, the Zephyrian ship is too damaged to make that kind of maneuver. Then we'll have to carry them. The impossible rescue. What happened next would be talked about in alien taverns for generations to come. The Resilience, a simple mining vessel, performed a maneuver that military tacticians would later call either brilliant or insane. Sarah ordered Jin to bring them alongside the Harmony's Dream, matching velocity with the damaged alien vessel. Then Rosa extended the Resilience's mining clamps, massive mechanical arms designed to grip and move asteroids. Are you trying to grab their ship? Webb asked, his voice filled with disbelief. That's exactly what we're doing, Sarah replied. Rosa, can those clamps hold a ship that size? They're designed to handle million-ton asteroids, Rosa said, her fingers flying over the controls. But I've never tried to grab something that's actively trying to cooperate. The Zephyrian ship understood what the humans were attempting and did their best to facilitate the connection. The mining clamps locked onto the Harmony's Dream's hull, and suddenly the Resilience was carrying twice its normal mass. Jin, get us into that asteroid field. Maximum burn. The combined vessels accelerated toward the dense collection of rocks, with 6 shadow ships in pursuit. Captain Voidclaw's voice crackled over the communications channel, filled with rage and disbelief. You're insane! No one can navigate through that field carrying another ship. No one from your species, maybe, Sarah replied calmly. What followed was a display of human ingenuity and stubbornness that would become legendary. Jin guided the unlikely pair through gaps between asteroids that seemed too small for even a single ship. When the direct path was blocked, he used the Resilience's mining lasers to blast smaller rocks out of the way. The shadow ships tried to follow, but their larger size and less agile construction made it impossible. One by one, they were forced to break off the pursuit rather than risk collision with the asteroids. We did it, Jin breathed, as they emerged from the far side of the field. We actually did it. But their celebration was short-lived. The Resilience's engines were overheating from the strain of carrying the alien vessel, and they were still hours away from safety. Commander, Rosa reported, we've got critical overheating in the main drive. If we don't shut down soon, we'll lose the engines entirely. Sarah made another impossible decision. Transfer emergency power to the engines. Shut down everything else except life support. Everything? Webb asked. That includes shields and weapons. If those shadow ships catch us now, weapons won't matter anyway. For the next 4 hours, the Resilience limped through space, carrying its alien passenger toward the safety of the Kepler station. The crew worked frantically to keep the engines running, while Dr. Windwhisper's voice provided updates on her ship's condition. Your species is remarkable, the Zephyrian scientist said during one of their communications. We have never encountered beings willing to risk so much for complete strangers. It's what we do, Sarah replied simply. When someone needs help, we help. Understanding the Deathworlders. As they traveled towards safety, Webb worked to establish better communication with the Zephyrian ship. What he learned amazed and terrified him in equal measure. Commander, you need to hear this, Webb said, his voice shaking. According to Dr. Windwhisper, humanity is listed in the galactic databases as a Deathworlder species. What does that mean? Sarah asked. It means we evolved on a planet that would kill most other species. They classify worlds based on danger levels. Earth is apparently a Class 7 death world. Sarah frowned. That sounds bad. It gets worse. Most spacefaring species evolved on Class 1 or 2 worlds. Gentle gravity, stable climates, no dangerous predators. The Zephyrians come from a world with half Earth's gravity and weather patterns that never vary by more than a few degrees. So they think we're dangerous? They think we're practically invulnerable. Listen to this. Webb activated a recording of Dr. Windwhisper's voice, translated into English. Your species comes from a world of constant danger. Your gravity would crush most of our bones. Your weather patterns would kill us within hours. Your predators hunt in packs and never give up the chase. Yet you not only survived, you thrived. You built machines that can cross the void between stars. You risk your lives for strangers. You are everything we fear and everything we wish we could be. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. No wonder the shadow ships backed off when we said we were Terran. There's more, Webb continued. According to the galactic databases, Deathworlder species are usually avoided by the rest of the galaxy. Most are considered too dangerous for contact. But we're not dangerous, Sarah protested. We're just trying to help. That's what makes us so terrifying to them, Webb replied. We have all the capabilities of a Deathworlder species, but we use them to protect others instead of conquering them. As they approached the Kepler station, Sarah began to understand the magnitude of what they had done. They hadn't just rescued a ship full of alien scientists. They had announced humanity's presence to the galaxy in a way that would be impossible to ignore. The universe was about to learn that the Deathworlders from Earth were not the monsters they had been expecting. They were something far more dangerous to the established order. They were heroes. The Galactic Awakening. The gathering storm news of the incident spread across the galaxy faster than the speed of light, carried by quantum communication networks that connected dozens of star systems. Within hours of the Resilience's return to the Kepler station, diplomatic vessels from half a dozen species were converging on human space. Sarah stood in the station's main conference room, watching through the viewport as alien ships arrived in formations that spoke of barely controlled panic. The vessels were unlike anything in human imagination, crystalline structures that seemed to bend light around them, organic shapes that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and geometric constructs that hurt to look at directly. Incoming transmission from the Ethereal Confederacy flagship, Webb announced from his communication station. They're requesting permission to dock. Sarah sighed. She had been expecting this moment ever since they had rescued Dr. Windwhisper and her crew. The Zephyrian scientists were now safely aboard the Kepler station, receiving medical treatment and sharing their story with anyone who would listen. Permission granted, Sarah said. But make it clear that this is a human facility. We'll meet with their representatives, but we won't be dictated to. The first alien to step aboard the Kepler station was Ambassador Thane Crystalline of the Ethereal Confederacy. He was tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to be made of living crystal and eyes that held the wisdom of centuries. His very presence seemed to make the air shimmer with barely contained energy. Commander Chen, Ambassador Crystalline said, his voice carrying harmonics that no human throat could produce. I am here to discuss the incident involving the Zephyrian research vessel. Sarah gestured to the conference room. Please have a seat, though I should mention that our chairs might not be designed for your physiology. The ambassador settled gracefully into one of the human chairs, his crystalline form adapting to the shape with fluid ease. Your species continues to surprise us, Commander. First you rescue our allies from the Shadow Maw raiders, then you offer hospitality to strangers. It's called being decent, Sarah replied. Where we come from, that's not unusual. Ambassador Crystalline's expression was unreadable, but Sarah detected something that might have been amusement. Indeed. That is precisely why the Galactic Council has requested this meeting. Over the next hour, Sarah learned about the complex political situation that humanity had unwittingly entered. The galaxy was divided into dozens of species, each with their own territories, alliances, and conflicts. The Ethereal Confederacy was one of the more powerful factions, dedicated to maintaining peace through diplomacy and mutual cooperation. The Shadow Maw raiders represent a different philosophy, Ambassador Crystalline explained. They believe that strength gives them the right to take what they want from weaker species. Until now, they have been careful not to provoke the major powers. But they attacked the Zephyrians, Sarah pointed out. Aren't they your allies? They are. But they are also a minor species with limited military capabilities. The raiders calculated that we would not risk a war over one research vessel. Sarah felt a cold anger building in her chest. So you would have just let them die? We would have lodged a formal protest and demanded reparations, the ambassador said uncomfortably. The council prefers diplomatic solutions to armed conflict. And if that had failed? Then we would have imposed economic sanctions. Sarah stared at the alien diplomat for a long moment. You would have let 30 innocent scientists die rather than risk a fight. We are not warriors, Commander. We are a peaceful species that has survived by avoiding unnecessary conflicts. Sometimes conflict is necessary, Sarah said firmly. When someone is hurting innocent people, you stop them. That's not optional. The Council's verdict. The debate that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. For the first time, representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the implications of contact with a Deathworlder species. Sarah found herself defending not just her actions, but humanity's entire approach to conflict resolution. The alien representative seemed genuinely confused by the concept of risking one's life for strangers. Your species evolved as persistence hunters, observed Representative Flux of the Geometric Collective, their voice emanating from a shape that constantly shifted between different mathematical forms. You are predators by nature. How can we trust that your protective instincts will not turn into aggressive expansion? Because we've had the ability to destroy our own planet for decades, Sarah replied. We could have used those weapons to conquer our neighbors. Instead, we used them to deter war. We could have strip-mined Earth until it was uninhabitable. Instead, we learned to live in balance with our environment. But you did come to the aid of the Zephyrians through violence, pointed out Senator Bloom of the Photosynthetic Alliance, their plant-like form rustling with agitation. You used weapons to solve a problem that could have been resolved through negotiation. Negotiation with pirates who were actively attacking a ship full of scientists? Sarah's voice carried a note of incredulity. How exactly were we supposed to negotiate with someone who was trying to kill innocent people? Dr. Windwhisper, who had been quietly observing the debate, suddenly spoke up. If I may address the council. The various representatives turned their attention to the Zephyrian scientist, who seemed small and fragile compared to the gathered delegates. The humans saved our lives, Dr. Windwhisper said simply. They risked their own ship and crew to protect people they had never met. They asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. In my species' long history, we have never encountered such selfless courage. But they are Deathworlders, protested Representative Flux. Their very nature makes them dangerous to established galactic order. Yes, Dr. Windwhisper agreed. They are dangerous. They are dangerous to pirates and raiders and anyone who would harm innocent people. But they are also the first species we have encountered that puts the welfare of others above their own safety. The debate continued for hours, but Sarah could see that the tide was turning. The alien representatives were beginning to understand that humanity represented something new in galactic politics. A species with the power to enforce their beliefs and the wisdom to use that power responsibly. The Kepler Accords, the agreement that emerged from the marathon negotiation session, would later be known as the Kepler Accords, named after the mining station where it was signed. The document established humanity's place in the galactic community and set precedents that would shape interspecies relations for generations. Under the Accords, humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with a unique status as galactic peacekeepers. Human vessels would be authorized to respond to distress calls from any species, anywhere in the galaxy. In exchange, humanity agreed to share their defensive technologies and training methods with allied species. This is unprecedented, Ambassador Crystalline admitted as they finalized the document. Never before has a single species been granted such broad authority. Never before has a single species proven so willing to use that authority responsibly, replied Admiral Victoria Cross, who had arrived from Earth Command to oversee the formal negotiations. Sarah watched the signing ceremony with mixed emotions. On one hand, she was proud of what humanity had accomplished. They had announced themselves to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as protectors. On the other hand, she knew that this was just the beginning. What happens now? She asked Admiral Cross during a brief break in the ceremonies. Now we prove that we deserve the trust they're placing in us, Cross replied. Earth Command is already organizing a new branch of the Space Force dedicated to peacekeeping operations. We'll need experienced commanders to lead it. Sarah looked out the viewport at the alien ships that surrounded the station. Each one represented a different species, a different world, a different set of challenges and opportunities. I suppose someone has to make sure they don't get into trouble, Sarah said with a smile. Is that a yes, Commander? Sarah thought about the 30 Zephyrian scientists who were alive because a human mining crew had decided to help. She thought about the thousands of other beings who might need help in the years to come. That's a yes, Admiral. Someone has to keep the peace. The new frontier. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the bridge of the HMS Peacekeeper, the first vessel specifically designed for galactic peacekeeping operations. The ship was a marvel of human engineering enhanced with alien technology, capable of crossing vast distances at unprecedented speeds. Her crew was a mixture of humans and aliens, each bringing their own skills and perspectives to the mission. Dr. Windwhisper served as the ship's scientific advisor, while representatives from dozens of species worked together to create a truly galactic peacekeeping force. "Commander," Lieutenant Park announced from the navigation station, "we're receiving a distress call from the Rigel system. Pirates are attacking a civilian convoy." Sarah settled into her command chair, feeling the familiar mixture of determination and responsibility that came with each new mission. "Set course for Rigel, maximum speed. Send a message to the attackers. This is the Galactic Peacekeeping Force. Cease your attack immediately." As the Peacekeeper leaped into hyperspace, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that first intercepted distress call. Humanity had found its place in the galaxy not as conquerors or isolationists, but as protectors of the innocent and defenders of the weak. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of beings worth protecting. And as long as there were those willing to prey on the innocent, there would be humans willing to stand in their way. The age of the galactic peacekeepers had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. Epilogue. The Silent Echo. Years later, historians would study the events that began with a single intercepted distress call. They would call it the Silent Echo, the moment when humanity's voice first rang out across the galaxy with a message of hope and protection. The Shadowmaw Raiders were eventually disbanded, their members either captured or driven from civilized space. The Zephyrian research into quantum harmonics led to breakthrough technologies that benefited all species. The Kepler station became a training facility for peacekeepers from across the galaxy. But perhaps the most important change was in the way species thought about each other. The old divisions between powerful and weak, predator and prey, began to blur as more civilizations embraced the human philosophy of protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. The universe was still dangerous, still full of challenges and conflicts, but it was also full of hope, carried by beings who had learned that true strength came not from the ability to take what you wanted, but from the willingness to give what others needed. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, new distress calls were being answered by those who had learned the most important lesson of all, that help will always come to those who need it, because there will always be someone listening for the silent echo of hope in the darkness.